Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hoopers Nation, your top destination for NBA basketball content. In perhaps the biggest NBA playoffs upset since the Dallas Mavericks beat the Miami Heat in the 2011 NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets overcame a 3-1 series deficit and somehow managed to eliminate the Los Angeles Clippers from the playoffs in just the second round. The news isn't only the fact that the Nuggets beat them, but how the Clippers consistently blew double-digit leads in Games 5 and 6 before eventually being blown out in Game 7. This was the Clippers team most people had as favorites to win the 2020 NBA championship. This was arguably the deepest team in the league, and their collapse left the whole NBA fanbase in awe and wondering exactly what went wrong for them in this series and what's next for them. In this video, we'll take a look at what happened to the Los Angeles Clippers in their second round matchup against the Nuggets and who the real culprits for the defeat are. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. Okay, there's only one way to describe the 2019-2020 Los Angeles Clippers: an embarrassment. It is important to state that in no way or form should the Denver Nuggets be discredited for what is an amazing comeback fueled by Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and a fantastic supporting cast that has more chemistry than these Clippers could ever dream of. But this was clearly the Clippers' series to lose, and even more so when they were in the driver's seat for most of the series. This team had 3 chances at closing the series out in 3 different games, and they held double-digit scoring advantages over Denver at various points in those 3 matchups. They blew them all and fell way short of the preseason championship expectations everybody, starting with the Clippers' own players and coaches, had for them. "We didn't meet them. That's the bottom line," said Clippers head coach Doc Rivers when asked about those expectations. "I'm the coach, and I'll take any blame for it." Rivers is now the only coach in NBA history to blow 3 different 3-1 playoff series leads. And while all the fingers shouldn't be pointing his way, as he suggests, he's a good starting point when talking about what went wrong in this series. For a coach who's been a bench leader for 21 straight seasons, it felt weird to see Rivers do next to nothing as the Clippers' results on the court reflected things were obviously not going according to plan. Both the planning and execution of whatever strategies they had were straight up terrible, and certainly unacceptable for a team this talented. But with the lack of adjustments the team made as the Nuggets were destroying and manhandling them, Rivers can only be described as insane. Einstein once said that insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And the definition perfectly matches Doc Rivers in the latter half of this series. The Clippers decided to double-team Nikola Jokic, and at first it appeared to be a sustainable strategy, as Denver was unable to make LA pay for leaving a man unguarded. Mike Malone and the Nuggets made the adjustment, and they started having their open man cut as soon as the defender doubled Jokic. This resulted in multiple easy scores, as Jokic used his superb playmaking skills to assist his teammates on those open cuts for easy scores. But did Rivers stop calling for those double teams? No. Also, in the second halves of Game 6 and 7, the Clippers' offense felt particularly stagnant and lifeless. Other than a small handful of plays where you saw the ball swinging across the court, the Clippers tried to rely on their talent and shot-making abilities to bail them out in ISO situations, and it clearly wasn't working. But did Doc Rivers try to get his star players and best scorers more involved through pick-and-roll action? These are just 2 examples of Rivers' lack of adaptability in this series, which is a big reason why they lost. And even when he made big mistakes, firing him right away isn't the solution. Good coaching is hard to come by in the NBA, and Rivers is a good coach. If he wasn't, the Clippers wouldn't have given up a first-round pick to acquire him from the Celtics in 2013. We didn't meet our expectations, clearly, because if we had, in my opinion, we'd still be playing. Rivers is right. Everybody expected to see the Battle of LA in the Western Conference Finals. Everybody expected to see Kawhi Leonard, a guy heavily advertised as the new king of LA, finally dethrone LeBron James and his Lakers for the crown of the City of Angels. Speaking of which, if anybody deserves as much blame as Rivers, it's Kawhi Leonard. The most odd, weird leader in NBA history might soon have to join James Harden in the passive superstars club, as it was just mind-boggling watching how little Leonard wanted to be involved in the Clippers' offense as his team was breaking into little pieces in Game 7 of the series. Leonard had just 2 points and shot just 1 for 11 in the second half of Game 7, in which the Clippers had a 2-point halftime lead. When you're a player of Leonard's caliber, the first thing you need to do at halftime is figure out what went wrong in the first 2 quarters and then go berserk on your opponents as soon as you return to the hardwood. His lack of aggressiveness was even reflected in his 0 free throw attempts throughout the game, as instead of looking to get physical and draw some contact for easy points, he continued settling for bad, long mid-range jumpers and inefficient fadeaways, making those shots as much easier when there's little pressure and you're not about to blow a 3-1 lead. As if there was any doubt, Kawhi was never the king of LA. What started as a friendly rivalry between both LA teams in New Balance, throwing a subtle jab at LeBron James for that king punchline, ended in utter embarrassment for Kawhi and company. If this series proved anything, it's that Leonard is still firmly behind LeBron in the NBA's small forward rankings. After a magnificent playoff run with the Toronto Raptors last season that culminated with a championship, Leonard decided to come to the Clippers to try and cement himself as the best player in the league. He also came to win more championships, and it seems like after losing to the Nuggets, Kawhi's odds at achieving those 2 things have plummeted. Watching Leonard crumble under the pressure was perhaps the biggest surprise in this series, given how the Claw's proven to be a capable playoff performer. The best example is last year's Game 7 versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Kawhi's line wasn't an efficiency clinic, but he didn't shy away from taking shots, especially that one last big shot, and that's what helped the Raptors advance. When your superstar is passive and has little interest in getting involved when the game is tight and survival's on the line, you're in trouble. Of course, one single good or bad playoff run doesn't elevate or discredit his legacy. This is something Kawhi's been building since his first Finals MVP in 2014, when he won his first ring with the San Antonio Spurs. But if this trend continues and Leonard keeps proving incapable of leading a team farther in the Western Conference, his legacy will be severely damaged. The West will only get tougher next season. The Lakers aren't going anywhere. The Nuggets team that just beat them will be more experienced. The Mavericks that also gave them a big-time scare in round 1 are coming back stronger. Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz continue their rise. The point is, Kawhi and his co-star Paul George need to come back next season with their A-game and start to build chemistry with their team. But as you might suspect, Kawhi Leonard and Doc Rivers, of course, are not the lone culprits for the Clippers' struggles this season. Enter Paul George. Pandemic P, Play Awful P, Playoff Poo, George Paul, whatever you want to call him works. But the truth is, he once again proved that he is no longer built for these big playoff moments. We're not talking about struggling in the NBA Finals against an all-time great team. We're talking about how much Paul George has struggled to even make it past the first and second rounds ever since he recovered from the gruesome injury he suffered in a Team USA scrimmage in the summer of 2014. Before then, George had epic duels against the LeBron James-led Miami Heat squads that reached the finals every season. He literally went toe-to-toe with peak LeBron, battled a much more star-heavy team, and was on the brink of eliminating them from the playoffs. But since then, he's done nothing relevant in the NBA playoffs. Did he lose his confidence? Is everything he tells the media just tough guy talk? His bad performances have been accentuated by his big mouth, just like Patrick Beverley, who told Steph Curry at the start of the season that the next 5 years were his, or Marcus Morris, who loved hyping his team up with the media. George became an overly confident loudmouth that got put right in his place. One quote that stood out from George's exit media availability from Game 7 was, "But I think, internally, we've always felt this was not a championship or bust year for us." Not only is this blatant lying, but pretty much every other member of the team, including Doc Rivers, expressed the total opposite. George himself went on to Instagram live streams earlier this season and talked about how they were immediately the biggest threats to win the title. At least Kawhi has always been modest and shied away from all that. But PG's words are incoherent with his actions and performances. He doesn't have any accolades to back up all this big boy talk. It's plain and simple. If you can't handle the pressure, you'll eventually flop. They almost did in round 1 against Dallas, and it happened against Denver. If they had managed to go by the Nuggets, they would have eventually crumbled against the Lakers in the conference finals. And while George, Kawhi, and Doc Rivers are the main culprits for the Clippers' shortcomings, the rest of the team shares a bit of the blame as well. Lou Williams was abysmal defensively and could not hit a shot to save his life in this series, shooting 35% from the field and 14% from 3 throughout the 7 games. Patrick Beverley's overly aggressive antics had him in foul trouble for key stretches in the series, and he was playing well enough to make a difference. Montrezl Harrell got annihilated by Nikola Jokic and was a team worst -37 in 134 minutes of action. The Clippers' best bet might be running it back and look to develop some chemistry. Marcus Morris, Pat Patterson, and 2026 Man of the Year Montrezl Harrell have just become free agents. Clippers owner Steve Ballmer has apparently made it clear he's willing to go into luxury tax territory to contend for a championship. But it's important to remember both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can opt out of their contracts in the summer of 2021. So if this season wasn't championship or bust, next season really is. So whatever it is that can help the team get better results next year, both Ballmer and Doc Rivers are in a huge hurry, because the clock is ticking. Do the Clippers have enough to contend for a championship with their current squad? Who do you think is most to blame for their shortcomings against the Nuggets? Make sure to comment your thoughts down below, as well as leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.